Hi, my name is Ashley Watt, and this is my case study for the Introduction to School Administration course. To jump right in, we are talking about the issue that arose in Lightville Community School District. And to give you a little backstory, this is a very rural district with about 60% of its population growing up on farms. But it is located very close to a large city, and because of that, it is pulling new students at an increase of about 2% per year. So they needed to figure out and find a way to accommodate for these growing students. They talked to the school board, talked to architects and engineers, and the three proposals out of that was passed that they will build a new building at the same site that houses 6th through 8th graders. After they decided that, they hired a principal named Susan Potter, and she will oversee making sure the construction and the design comes along as processed. And then she was also tasked with creating the mission and vision statement for the new school, along with developing curriculum and hiring staff. She actually, because of the combination of the two schools, there's only 4 new staff positions that she had to hire for. So from this, one of her first steps was to go ahead and develop an advisory committee. It was made of 4 teachers from different content areas. And somebody else that is pretty important in this is Helen Burke, who was appointed as the committee chair for this advisory committee. The disagreement overall is, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future, but it's always important to remember when you're thinking of anything to do with schools that it affects the entire community, and it's really important to think about the students with everything that you're doing. So legal and ethical issues with this case study. There really, I don't think, was any legal issues that popped up. It is very interesting that there was kind of 3 factions that were of people, and that's going to be the way it is in any community when it comes to talking about money and taxes and building something new for a school. Some had issues that there was going to be debt incurred before the last debt was resolved, and this choice had a very narrow approval of 53 to 47%. So moving forward, Ms. Potter needs to be very careful with what she does and hopefully find a way to make all of those factions happy. So that is something to keep in the back of our mind. Part of this issue is now that they've created this advisory committee, the advisory committee chair, Mrs. Burke, has said that they really kind of want to be hands-off with choosing a mission statement and a vision statement. They want Susan Potter to do it all, and they'll approve whatever she says. And giving sole power to one person and saying, yes, we'll just agree with whatever you say because you're a visionary leader is very dangerous when it could affect an entire community. So to me, that is really an ethical issue that comes up here. And I know that Susan Potter, through the readings, it has shown that she's not very comfortable with it at all. So just a general, this is what the problem is. After developing the advisory committee to help create the new middle school's philosophy, mission, and vision statements, the committee is negating their part of the creation of these items and putting the development of them solely on the new principal. When we're talking about people, it is always, you have to think of it as a community as a whole, especially because taxpayers fund schools. And it is a small, tight-knit community that does have some outsiders coming in, and that's why some of this change is happening. But I've taught at a small community like that before, so they all know each other. And it is very important to keep that in the back of your head as you're planning things. Students growing and changing demographically, although it's very rural, you are having some migrate in from the city. The committee was made up of a selection of 4 teachers, and it was a selection made by the school board, is important to remember. The new principal, Mrs. Potter, has never worked in a rural community, and she values and seeks input from other people. It's also important that she is very apprehensive about going into the rural community because she's never worked there before, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. To talk about it, we've kind of hit on some of these already. 60% of residents live on farms. Being close to the major city, they are getting some transplants in. The elementary houses the sixth grade, and it is 22 years old, and the junior senior high school is about 11 years old, which honestly is not very old for a building of that type. So the program grade levels, the new middle school will have 6th through 8th grade. Only 4 brand new faculty were needed, so you really have some consistency for the most part. Curriculum and the former mission and value statement that the district has can possibly be carried throughout. Curriculum will be decided by the new principal and the advisory committee while they're developing this. Could this be damaging? I'm a firm believer that decisions in education need to be made with input from a representative group using valid data and research. It could be damaging if it follows through with the way that the group wants it to. If she is the sole person that makes the decision of the mission statement, the value statement, and the curriculum they will use, she doesn't know this community, she doesn't know the history, she doesn't really even know the students, so it absolutely could be damaging. She's coming from a large school district to a small school district. I just think it's irresponsible for them to proceed in this manner with her being so new to the situation. Even though she is a visionary leader, she was selected out of a large group, and she has a lot of history in education, that doesn't mean that she should be the only person making decisions. It could really affect teacher morale and overall efficacy of teachers, I think. Important stake, obviously, students should be at the center of this and thought about this, but it affects the mission and the vision statement, and the curriculum they're doing affects all staff members and really affects not community members directly, but you have to keep that in the back of your head, especially when this was passed by such a narrow vote. The information we still need, what support is really out there. A handful of people are the ones that agreed to do this. So politics, it's making sure to get into the community and get community input. She needs to know, Susan Potter and the committee needs to keep in mind the curriculum that's already being used. They need to think of district-wide how this is going to flow from an elementary to a middle school to a high school level. Need to take into account the district's mission and value statement and vision statement to make sure that those all align from kindergarten all the way through graduation. Here are the options that I kind of set forth for her to hopefully follow and to move forward. For no action, it would just be that the continue with the committee as is. Ms. Potter makes decisions, and the way that the committee has made it sound is that they'll automatically agree, and because some of them are related to the school board members, they will automatically agree. It'll be easy. So that is option 1. Option 2, drastic action, would be for me to get a whole new committee. To say, just to tell them, you aren't exactly agreeing with how I would like to do this, so I'm going to look for new people. Other options could be to add more committee members. And option 4, Ms. Potter takes over the chair position. Early on, Ms. Potter said that she didn't want to be the chair because she wanted to have input, and chairs usually function as just people who organize, run agendas. They don't have a whole lot of input. So she wanted more input, but she could take that power back from Mrs. Burke and use that to kind of not sway the committee, but to have them make decisions and have them be the ones with just the input. Another option would be a whole staff committee is a possible option. As we are looking and evaluating the options, some of the pros and cons of option 1, so no change, continue as is, it could simplify the process. It would make it very easy. If all of her ideas are just passed and agreed upon, that just is very simple. The cons, Ms. Potter does not know the community. It's very hard to come in first year. She hasn't even really gotten an opportunity to be a principal yet. To take that kind of power into her hands would be very scary for me as a principal. Her ideals, because of that, and because she's been at a bigger school, could differ greatly from what that community values and those teachers and faculty value. And you, as an administrator, you always have to keep in mind that your job relies on the fact that the school board members, they are the ones that update your contract every year. So any and all issues, if something happened, they're like, we disagree, there's teacher morale issues, and things like that would all fall back on her because it was all her idea and really pretty much all of her decision. If we did option two, you could start from scratch. Select those who want to progress in a similar way. So she would be able to discuss with the new committee members how she wants to do something, and they would hopefully agree with how she wants to collectively come up with ideas for the mission and vision statements. The issues with option two of forming a new committee could be that you greatly offend and upset current committee members. And because these committee members, Mrs. Burke, her cousin and brother are all people that are on the school board and things along those lines. So it quickly trickles down through the community as offending people right off of the bat. The other options, so option three, if you add more committee members, the definite pro here is that there's more opinions, there's more people's input. These decisions should be supported by more stakeholders, because if you have a more representative group, more people should support it if they feel like they have kind of a democratic value in the process. The cons of that is it's time consuming. Whenever you add more people, more time just happens. You could offend the current committee members if they feel like possibly that you did that because of the way they were doing things. Option four, taking over as chairperson. It would give decision making back to the committee. So if Ms. Potter takes herself out of that being a committee member, she could give that back to them. The cons, it's really going backwards, and she will lose her option for input and ideas for the most part if the committee functioned like a true advisory committee should. Option five, the whole staff committee. Decisions should have more support, because if the whole staff is in on it, they hear it, they agree with it, and lots more ideas and input. Cons, it's time consuming. It's very hard to direct a group of that size, and these are people who haven't necessarily worked with each other yet, since you're pulling a 6th grade from the elementary school and a 7th and 8th from a junior senior high school. And quite simply, in this job, if you don't realize that you cannot please everyone, you're going to have a really hard time. So my decision would be to select option three and add more committee members. I would hopefully take some time and get to know. You could ask for volunteers, or you could request for, if you would like to be on this committee, please let me know. And that would give you a little more input. Because these were board selected individuals that are already on the advisory committee, you really may have a conflict of interest, because some of these board members are related to those that are on the committee. The committee could be made up of members of not only teachers and faculty, but it could be community members and Board of Education members. Definitely attempt to invite people from all factions, so those people that didn't necessarily agree with passing this building of this new school could be important. From those committee members, any decisions and things like that could be town hall meetings, and I know not necessarily full town hall, but you could pull the whole faculty in to give them some options and some input, and just show them what the committee is working on throughout this. You must, as you work in this committee, pinpoint community values, and must create a mission and value statement that are widely accepted and endorsed. Because if you do not have that, you will not work forward with teacher morale being high, and that affects teacher efficacy and a collective efficacy as a staff member as well. If I don't support the mission and the ideas that we're putting forth, I am probably not going to be as good as my job. Implementation, I would add more members to the committee. You may not get volunteers. People could absolutely say no. And you're probably going to offend some of the current committee members. as you implement this, the first needs to be the committee, and it could very easily be just telling them, hey, I think we need more people on this. 4 people for this group may not necessarily be a representative. I think it would be a good idea to get more people. Secondly, the Board of Education, because they're the ones that appointed that committee, they need to know, and the superintendent needs to know of your plan to add more members. And finally, you need to inform the new possible committee members. Dealing with personal conflict, I think a person that needs to be addressed right off the bat is Helen Burke, and she needs to be approached separately and spoken to openly about the issue, and kind of use that warn, do not threaten. Just say, I don't know that we're proceeding in the way we want. I don't, just be honest and say, as the new principal, I don't feel comfortable making whole group decisions. So I think we will add more people, and just explain to her, if you would like to remain the chair of this committee, you can, or we can either find somebody else new, or she could also take it over at that point too. I think that adding more members to the current committee could promote a collaborative effort among stakeholders. Backup plan. If the plan of adding new members does not work, I would definitely take over being the chair of the committee. As we're going through this, I would keep as much documentation as possible. That's really important anytime you're making decisions in education. I could propose a mission, value, and possible curriculum, but make sure that that proposal is then seen by a whole staff and they vote and have input. Make sure that all meetings are formatted for discussions and input. And kind of like I said, I would hold a full staff and faculty meeting before the final acceptance of anything, and even put it to a vote. As we're thinking of an ELP standard, mission, vision, and improvement, mission statements should be, collectively constructed. They need to be concise and meaningful to a group. And if groups have a common belief and value system, they will pursue them more consistently as a whole group. Good teams have common missions and values. So the mission statement should really serve as a reference and reminder of the goals. It should push staff development and provide direct direction for the school improvement. It's a part of some accreditation models, so you kind of have to have this in some places. And a mission statement should be living and revisited, reviewed at the conclusion of every year. I think communicating the vision and mission statement are the core, really important. I also think that this should really be seen, like every year in Kansas, we have to do individual goals as teachers and set them up there and turn them in. I think the mission and value statement should absolutely be done every year, just like we have to do our personal goals. And so, the value being the list of core values of the school, and the mission statement, like how are we going to work on those values and make sure we're helping those kids, is really important. And to do that, I would make sure that we include the vision and mission and stationery and communications, post it in classrooms, give a way to celebrate the mission and vision, recognize those teachers, faculty, and students or community members who are excelling at supporting that mission, and always coming back to research and data and making sure that we're supporting students in the best way possible. And here are some of the references that I used for that. Please feel free to email me or ask me any questions about this. Thank you.